The Road Less Traveled by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. A reading from the Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 7, verse 13. And Jesus said to them, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the path is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Well, enough of this pleasant small talk, says Yama to Nachiketa. Let's get right down to business, my dear boy. You must take up the life of meditation to get what you're seeking. Now Nachiketa's a little confused. What am I seeking? Oh dear death. You are seeking, Nachiketa, what you will find, and here's what you're going to find on the path of meditation. Something, I might add, all of you can find on the path of meditation. When you meditate long enough, Yama teaches, you shall discover that you sink, you plummet through 5 layers. These are the 5 layers that are your life. First, O Nachiketa, says Yama, you shall confront the physical world. You know, all the stuff that you can see and perceive, all the physical stuff. When you were a child, you believed there was nothing but the physical stuff. You believed that if it wasn't red or green or blue or yellow, it wasn't there. As you grow, you start to learn that things are more complicated than that. But in meditation, first you confront your physical world. Then you sink into a deep pool, an ocean, the ocean that is your life within the divinely flowing cosmos, to find the second layer. What is the second layer? Your own senses, your own perceptions, your senses, the 5 senses we talk about. What you hear. Not the things you hear, but the sounds themselves, the sight themselves, all this which exists within you. As you meditate, you'll begin to confront your own senses. Your senses always thirst. When you're caught up in your sense level, Yama is teaching us, when you're stuck at the sense level because you haven't meditated enough, you're always hungry. What are you hungry for when you're stuck at the sense level? More food. And you say, well, I've got a good control of my diet. But you might find that the reason you have such good control of your diet is because of your own vanity. You find that when you're not slim and in good health, it's more difficult to attract the people you want to be attracted to sexually. You see, you're still thinking entirely at the sense level. You would eat tacos all day long if only they had no calories and tasted the same. How do you get past the sense level? You keep meditating. You stick with it until you come face to face after a long time, eye to eye with something a little bit scary, the next level of your life, the life that you have in the ever-flowing universe, in the pinball machine that is the divine orchestra. Now, after some time meditating, you can see the layer of your emotions. Your feelings. Even the emotions that began budding and developing in you when you were so little that you cannot remember. It's very traumatic being small. Do you know why you can't remember being a baby? Do you know why you can't remember being 2 years old? 2 days old? Why can't you remember being 2 days old? Because if you could, that reality would be so traumatic that you would be paralyzed with fear for the rest of your life. What do I mean by this? A 2-year-old screams and cries because it wants to be held, it wants to be warm. And it's just a fact of the world that it can't always have what it wants, in part because it's impossible to tell what it wants. All we know is it's crying, whether it wants to be held and be warm or fed or given something to drink or something altogether different. But that 2-day-old child doesn't get what it wants, and that's a little bit traumatic. It's a little bit traumatic. Fortunately, we don't remember those traumatic experiences, but they plant seeds within us. Our early days are hopefully surrounded by much love and care and peace and calm from our parents and families, but they can't be pure peace, pure calm, pure love, no matter what. All of us, at some point in those early days of our life, have traumatic experiences. The first time you woke up in the middle of the night hungry, you don't remember it, of course, but that was traumatic. Imagine even now, if you woke up and found out that you'd spent half your life in a coma, and you woke up and all you know is that you have an extreme hunger pain right in your stomach, except you can't even name it when you're that little. It's just the pain. And when you're 2 days old, you may have slept the first 24 hours, so half your life has been spent asleep, and you wake up, And oh, the agony. In meditation, we begin to confront the buildup of trauma. Good meditation is like Drano. You ever had a bathroom and maybe you've had an apartment or an old house or something like that, where it's gunk builds up in the kitchen drain in the sink, right? And eventually nothing goes down. The sink just stops working right. And so what do? You go out and you buy some Drano and you pour it in the sink and you clear the gunk out. And now things can flow cleanly and smoothly down the pipes. This is what meditation can do when you reach this stage. It clears out all the nasty garbage that's been building up. And now, when life comes at you, when experiences come at you, instead of just piling one on top of another until you're buried in the dirty water of day-to-day life, now life comes at you and it goes through you cleanly. Your experiences have a purity about them once you've confronted the emotional stage. Next, you sink deeper into this abyss and confront your intellect. Now you start learning how to think. Much of life is just learning how to think. I was having a rough start yesterday. Just a rough start to my day. Things weren't going right. How many things did I spill? 2. First, at breakfast, I got out my NutriBullet blender, put in a little bit of juice, the protein powder, a handful of broccoli, some fresh spinach, and half of a peach for my breakfast. And then I put the blade on, the blade cap, but I didn't screw it on. Something distracted me, and I had to put something back in the refrigerator. And then I went to put the cup on the blender, but I hadn't screwed on the blade right. Everything all over the counter. All the juice, the broccoli, a lost scoop of protein. Well, because I've been meditating for some time, I'm starting to get okay. I'm starting to get pretty good at handling things like this. I could have really lost it, I could have let that really color my day. But I've learned strategies for thinking about things like this. Do you know what I do? Do you know what I've started doing? And this is just my own coping mechanism. I carry this little voice recorder. Because you see, later that morning, I came to the office and I was getting things out of my car. And do you know what I did? I knocked over the cup of coffee in the holder. There was coffee all over the driver's seat. I had to come up and get my little handheld vacuum cleaner and clean up the driver's seat. Now, this is the kind of thing that once upon a time really could have ruined my day. I could have been cussing and swearing. But I got out my little recorder and I just talked. I keep an audio log. I'm trying to play it for you here, but I'm not. This is a new recorder I have. I keep a daily log. I say personal log, August 26th, 2020. Off to a rough start today. Spilled my breakfast smoothie. Spilled the coffee on the car seat. I have to admit, I'm a little worried about how that's going to affect the lease when I return the car. And I just talked my way through it for about, 90 seconds. And then I was able to move on with my day. See, I'm starting to learn to confront how I think. Then, Yama says to Nachiketa, comes the most exciting part of meditation. When you confront I'm not sure we have a good word for this in English. I'm going to use a word loosely. You'll have to forgive me. I'm going to call it. I hate to do this. I'm just going to call it your soul for now. Really, it's the part of you which is the power to be divinized. And you think, oh man, this is some weird Indian Hindu spirituality stuff. Believe it or not, you can find it in Christianity too. Thomas Aquinas. I wrote about this in my master's thesis some years ago. Thomas Aquinas says that the human soul can do many things. Uh, it has many, just like your body has many parts, arms for waving and swinging, and legs for walking, and a mouth for eating. Your soul has parts that do different things, that help you think, that help you act, that help you behave, that help you control yourself. But Aquinas says there's one part of the soul which you shouldn't even call a part because it's so deeply ingrained in the human soul. And that's the part to receive God and to become God. So what I'm saying here, I mean, it's part of the Katha Upanishad, but it's really not that unusual as far as religion goes. So, says Yama to Nachiketa, get up, meditate, pick up this way of life. And before you, you will find two paths, two roads diverging in a yellow wood. And you must choose which to take. The wide and easy gate that leads to destruction, as Christ taught, or the hard and narrow gate which leads to your ultimate fulfillment in a divine reality. What are these two paths called? Yama tells us in the original language they were called Preya, Preya versus Shreya. Preya feels good. Shreya is good. Preya has to do with pleasure. Preya, Preya's allure decreases as you conquer each of these levels of meditation. And what increases at each of these levels is Shreya. The best English word for Shreya is utility, usefulness. Useful for what? Useful for being who you really are. And who are you? You are a charioteer, we learn from the Katha Upanishad. And you have two horses. The one is Preya. The other is named Shreya. They always want to go in opposite directions. Now, it's just a fact of human life, a biological fact, if you will, that the first stages of the maturing process, from the time you're a baby and really coming to full force in your teenage years, in that process we refer to as puberty and the year or two afterwards. What happens is the horse called Preya gets really strong. That horse exercises every day. That horse eats the diet of a championship boxer. 2 grams of protein for each pound of body weight. All the best vegetables. Fruits, just enough carbs to be able to run a race and not one more, because you're not going to find 1 extra% of body fat on the horse called Preya. And yet, that's nothing but pleasure. That's nothing but these early stages that you have to sink through. Now, your job and the task that comes upon you in meditation is to start training Shreya. You start training Shreya so that you can get to the final level. Because at the final level, when you become who you really are, when you become who you're supposed to be, you and Shreya can team up together, and Preya will do only what you allow it to do. Do you want to have a piece of candy? The choice will be yours. The choice will be yours. I have seen people who cannot go one full day of proper nutrition. They have the money, they have the resources, but they can't go a whole day without eating a cupcake. I have seen people who cannot go one whole week without getting drunk. I have known people who could not go without casual sex for very long. I have known people who could not go a month without watching television. I once knew someone who could not drive from the door of his house 3 minutes to the convenience store without hooking up in his car the stereo apparatus that he had. He could not drive without hearing loud music. When you reach these final levels of meditation, the Katha Upanishad tells us, you will have such control with the power of Shreya that Preya does only what you tell it to do. If you want to hear a song, you'll play the song, but you'll enjoy the song at a new level. And you won't have to hear the song. You will feel no pain if your radio doesn't work. There will be nothing sad for you when you can't have a piece of candy. Preya, the desire for pleasure, will obey you and you alone after the long, arduous process of meditation. How do you start cultivating the power of Shreya now? Simple. In conjunction with your meditation practice, simply start avoiding Preya. You start doing little things, and you build up to bigger ones. And sometimes you stretch yourself to force yourself to do something difficult. You take your coffee with no cream or sugar. You start doing that. You start seriously limiting how much time you spend on social media. You say 15 minutes, no more. You hear your phone, but you don't immediately have to tend to it. You don't have to respond to every text right away. You learn to eat foods without some of your favorite seasonings or condiments. And when you do this in conjunction with your meditation practice, You're training Shreya to have control over Preya. This is the beauty of meditation. This is the power that you have within you, that you can cultivate starting now, starting today. It will be a long process. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was your life. But you'll get there if you start. All you have to do is begin. So next time we're going to take a deeper look at some of the theory underlying the Katha Upanishad and some of these spiritual disciplines that we're exploring.